Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours, where we're here to answer your questions about media and production 24/7. If you're watching on YouTube, you can either enter your questions by using the QR code that appears down in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, or you can use our Mukana interface if you're familiar with how the show works that way. If you use Mukana, it's great because you have a chance to vote the questions up and down. If you use the QR code, you're going to be immediately tossed into kind of the back end, and they're going to go through the questions and pull them into the show. But that can happen really quickly. So if you have a question, something you're interested in about our topic today, which is basically kind of a review of some of the video announcements from NAB, that's the way you can participate and get into the show with your thoughts. Anyway, we are about to dive into our question list. Alexander, what do we have up for today?
First one this morning is from Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida. NAB on-site crew, what was the most interesting product in the small booth/small company areas?
Elias, take it away. Start us off.
Absolutely. I was browsing around one of the booths, Salray Works, I believe, and I had been joking on LinkedIn about making a DMX to NDI converter. And didn't they have a little prototype DMX to NDI box hooked up to a DMX light fixture? And it works. Like, it's just a little prototype box. And I thought, that is so cool. They just made it.
That is one of the most fun things about NAB is you go to look, maybe I can solve a problem, and then you find somebody who had the same exact idea and they've actually implemented it. Did you get a chance to talk to either the developer or whoever was in the booth and ask them how it worked?
Yeah, I don't think the developer was at the booth, but I got a chance to just talk with them a little bit about how they were doing it, and it was just wrapping the DMX protocol into NDI metadata packets. And then the X-Keys booth, they were doing the same thing with one of their new control surfaces. To link their two control surfaces, they're linking it with NDI. So it's neat to see just the smaller manufacturers, how they're what they're doing with that tech.
Yeah, it's most of the time you walk in and you're gobsmacked by the gigantic booths and the big companies, but as you're mentioning, I found so many little problem solvers with the small guys on the floor. Guy, what's up?
Yeah, since Elias was there, I wasn't actually on the ground. You guys probably saw I was here in Seattle, but I was captivated by Salray Works as well. I don't know if I trust them quite yet because they are such a small company, but did you get a chance to look at this thing? The DVR, basically they're saying it's like a router, but you can have like 50 cameras in a hospital and you could route things around. What did you think of that, Elias?
That was really cool. They've got that router. They have a giant control surface, not just control surface, but like a video mixer, vision mixer for NDI and all sorts of video sources. A nice all-in-one unit. They had it paired up to a touchscreen, so you were able to just drag sources around. They're doing some really cool stuff.
Because a few years ago they had the PTZ. Did they show off their PTZ NDI that you could put any camcorder on?
Yeah. Oh, right. They were doing that as well. Yeah, it's just a PTZ head with any kind of camera that you want on it, and again, controllable through NDI's PTZ. That was super cool.
Yeah, and then circling back to the DMX over NDI, I'd seen that in Siena a couple of years ago, and I was wondering, because they said it was beta, and they wanted people to, because there's no official standard yet for the DMX over NDI, so they were trying to introduce, happily, like, hey, here's how we would do it if you guys want to adopt this. But that's cool that Salray Works is picking it up. I'm excited to see what else they come out with.
Let's go to our next question.
Next question is from Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas. What will be the impact on production video of the Atomos Ninja Phone Video Coprocessor, a 10-bit video coprocessor for smartphones and tablets that records from pro cameras via HDMI? There's a YouTube link there. Guy,
what did you think?
I don't know if it's going to change a whole bunch because, there's already units that do something similar. So basically, you need a $1,500 phone. So let's get that part out of the way. And then you slap this $399 thing on it. And it can do three things, which is pretty impressive at the same time. So it can record ProRes, it can stream, and then it's a monitor. So it's converting the HDMI to arguably one of the best screens on the market. I mean, it's Apple spending millions and millions and millions of dollars to develop this XDR screen, and that's why they've hopped on this bandwagon of they're like, why compete, you know? So if you look at a small camera like a Red Komodo, the screen is like maybe an inch. It's super tiny. It's unusable, really. You need something, and so being able to take a Ninja, I don't know if I'll spend that kind of money, you know, $399, because I already have. I showed it the other day. Where'd it go? It's on my desk somewhere around here. Here. So this device has been out on the market. It's only $149, and if you just need to put a phone, so you put your phone inside of here, and this thing will do not only the iPhone, but it's built with a cage for the iPad already. So they had mentioned in another video that this device is not only, obviously it's just USB-C, it's not only for iPhone, it's for iPad, but they just haven't built the adapter yet. But Axion already has it. So I'm like, okay, if you just need a monitor, it's already out there for a fraction of the cost, and it does more. So I'm a little confused as to what their strategy is, unless there is more to that processor. And I've seen Atomos do this in the past, where they have more capability in that processor, like they overbuild it, and they have a tight relationship with Apple. So we'll see what winds up happening. I think it's a cool product. I'm still a little confused as to if they're going to make money off this, because, you know, they're a huge company, and to come to a trade show like this with, oh, hey, we got something for a phone for you broadcasters. It's like, huh? It's the product I didn't ask for.
Well, interestingly enough, though, having just come back, one of the first things I saw when I sat down to try to catch up on news was something out of Washington, D.C. Some politician was talking, but they had a reverse shot. And the press gaggle around that person, I didn't see a traditional camcorder of any type. I didn't see a shoulder mount. I didn't see anything. I saw a forest of iPhones and other types of smartphones pointed at that, doing either capture or live coverage back. So in some areas of even the professional media thing, this trend toward using mobile tools for quick turn stuff is just everywhere. And I think it's going to continue there. Now, that's breaking news stuff, and that's not field production, where sometimes, as in the case of the rig you'll see that we were using, you need a lot more capabilities to do full-scale, full bandwidth wireless out to the real world. But the number of press people who have just said goodbye to big cameras and we're just going to do it on mobile is everywhere. Guy, you had some thoughts?
Yeah, and that is who they're targeting. They're trying to target the creator economy because they realize there's so many people out there. And then it does record them both simultaneously. So you can do H.265 plus ProRes, and then you can, if you don't buy the biggest phone, if you don't get the 1 terabyte, you can record. It's about 4 hours of ProRes HQ if you utilize the whole 1 terabyte, which you still need, like, you know, some space for your stuff, unless you get a dedicated phone, which is what they're kind of pitching is, you know, get a dedicated phone. It's like, okay, that's a lot. But in the creator economy, you can store onto your iCloud, or you could go right to frame.io, and then that frees up your phone. So you're just using it to do the show, get it up there off your into the cloud, and then get it off your phone. So that's kind of the rhythm that they're anticipating, is to use it in a production in that manner.
Yeah, and it was interesting to me because as I looked at that reverse shot, it wasn't the typical creator types. These looked like seasoned Washington reporters. I mean, they were in suits and ties. They were talking to somebody really high up. I can't remember. In fact, I didn't ever get on it. But it looked like an NBC hit or something like that. I mean, this was a serious press gaggle with somebody of significant importance, and they were not covering it with shoulder-mounted cameras. Even these professional reporters at the highest level had switched over and were going mobile there. That kind of indicated to me, you know, there's a change. We've seen this coming for a long time, and it is so much easier and so much less burdensome, and you can be more reactive and quick to get somewhere. Now, I'm not saying this was one of the main correspondents doing a two-up interview. It wasn't that kind of thing. But somebody was speaking, and you just knew that the clips they were capturing there were going to go on the major networks as they tried to do what Washington and everybody else does, which is get information out. It felt a little like this is the maturation of mobile for professional use in a situation like that I never would have seen really before. At least it wasn't in my head. Guy, continue.
Yeah, one more thing. If you are looking at these, this is the Axoon on a 14. So realize that you don't have to buy a brand new phone if you don't need H.265. This thing does almost everything that you wanted to do with the false color, the zebras, being able to see waveform, vector scope, and it comes with the lightning adapter, so you can use it with the older phones. And then you can also use the Sony batteries. So this is just a standard issue NP style battery, so you can use that and charge your phone at the same time. And then it has the hot shoe that's included, and then you get a shoe back on top. So something else to look at. I mean, I love Atomos, but it's still a scratching my head type product.
Elias, you wanted to pop in on this?
You got me thinking, Bill, about local reporters, especially like, city-based or municipal-based reporters that are on shoestring budgets and need to get production equipment. And if they're, if they have a budget of like maybe $5,000 and they're going, how do we make the most of this? How do we reduce our turnaround times? Like, this is the perfect solution for local reporters and local correspondents.
The other interesting thing to me was that there was nothing on it. This was the reporter that I saw. In fact, 3 or 4 of the reporters in the front row facing this politician were literally just holding their phones in their hands up, capturing this live piece of content. They were very close, probably just 3 or 4 feet in front of somebody. And so I can't – they didn't have them wired. It didn't seem anything, but they were capturing that. Now, it also could have been reporters – taking essentially notes. This might not have been specifically for broadcast. So I don't want to overpromise and say that you can be a national level reporter with nothing but an iPhone and no attendant gear. That may not be what's happening here. It was just unusual for me to see that array, and every reporter there, none of them had shoulder-mounted cameras. None of them even had handy-cam-mounted form factors. They all were using their phones because it just seemed to be the best way for them to capture the information and translate it out to an audience later. It was just fascinating. It was just one of those moments where, wow, this is a change. I haven't seen this before. So anyway, let's go on to the next question.
Next one is a QR code question from Chuck Hodges in Tuolumne, California. Announced during NAB, Vantage will now be partnering with Josh.AI. Is this a game changer for these kinds of products, or is Legrand just shooting stars? How will this affect all the people who watch the Office Hours show?
I don't know if so. Okay, first and foremost, those of us who were on site were a little bit cut off from the world because we were so busy during this, and I wish I had more information about what you're talking about. I will say that AI was one of the parallel themes that we saw at the show. The big camera manufacturers, Blackmagic, Adobe, with their software, the editing people, were all billboarding something about AI in their workflows. It seemed to me like what Michael Cioni talked here on the show about utility AI, something to process the back end, as opposed to the generative AI side where you're creating content using AI and then having that become part of your process. But you can tell it's filtering in everywhere in our lives. AI is driving just a ton of change out there. I was also really interested. I was talking to somebody else about this. There was a big deal between Apple and Shutterstock Getty. They licensed a boatload of content. In fact, the entire, I think, library, Apple did, with the intent that they're not going to fold it in. They're just needing that basis for research. They want access to those gigantic photo and video libraries in the back end of their software, and they're going to take the long road to, you're not going to see something next week. You're not going to see something next year probably. But in 5 years, who knows what they're cooking up in the labs behind that. It just tells you how critical AI is for the coming decades of transition in the industry. There's just so much activity out there. And we saw that, a lot of booths had something where they were a small sign or even a larger one indicating that they were actively investigating incorporating some form of AI. My guess is probably utility AI in the early days into their products. So fingers crossed and see. This is another of those questions, Chuck, where the breaking news teams and everybody who is looking around, when we all get back and settle down, we are talking tomorrow on this show, by the way, about the tech behind what we did at NAB, it's pretty impressive. I got to tell you, a lot of people worked very hard at this. It's going to take us a few days to process everything that we saw. And I know this is a great breaking news story that you're asking about. We will be talking about this and everything up. So you may want to bring this question back in a couple of days as we've all had a chance to get our brains settled down after all this traveling and kind of know what we saw. I saw a bunch of stuff, and I can't even have time to think about this now, but this is really interesting. That's going to be fun for me to process and figure out where it fits in my work and hopefully maybe other people's as well. Let's go on to the next question.
All right, we have another QR code question from Kern. Thoughts on the Roland 4R 4DAV mixer? Is it a replacement for an ATEM Mini / MixPre setup? And then there's a link to the product on BH Photo Video.
Cool. Alexander's going to help you out, Alexander.
Is it a replacement? Well, not really. And it depends, as we often say on this. It's not always clear cut. It depends on what your needs are. Actually, I just got it pulled up here. Let me cut to that. So this is the 4R 4HD mixer. Now, one thing I will say, having some hands-on experience with some Roland mixers, is that the build quality is generally quite superior to Blackmagic products. However, feature for feature, they're not as competitive, and they are at a much higher price point. I think Roland products are really good at specific industries like corporate AV and that kind of thing. The one advantage you do get with this is that you get 4 balanced XLR mic preamps here. And you also have an auto mixer, which is a really nice feature, and that's built in. There's USB 3.0 streaming, but you don't get ISO recording, nor do you get, at this price point, nor do you get any kind of built-in live streaming. So you still need a computer. You still need an application to do live streaming. You get 4 HDMI inputs on the back. There's composite video. Think about that. Composite video inputs. When was the last time you used those? So again, it kind of makes me think this is really geared towards corporate AV stuff. Maybe they've got old hardware they need to integrate as well. There's a nice big screen on it. Generally, the Roland stuff is a lot easier to use. They don't have 150 buttons on their switcher like Blackmagic, so that's another thing to keep in mind. So at that price point, $11.99, you're into ATEM Mini Extreme ISO territory. So just think about really what you need. How many inputs do you need? If you're going to need more than 4, you're going to really want to look at the Blackmagic product. Otherwise, to get more than 4 inputs in a Roland product, you're going to be spending many thousands of dollars more than that.
Well, let's go to the next question.
Next one's from Douglas Carmichael. Can Dante run properly without a secondary connection for the home studio and other non-critical use cases?
And Elias is going to help us out here. Elias?
It can run, but the key word is properly. And I would be very, very careful if you're sticking Dante or any AV over IP protocol onto an existing network. If it's a small proof of concept, it might be okay. But if you're going to be doing anything serious, I would tread very carefully and test a lot before you put it into production. That's going to be true regardless of the protocol that you're using.
Let's go to the next question.
Andy Kokendorfer from Vieira, Florida asks, product idea, ZoomBox for backhaul. With all the cloud video production being developed, it seems like a simple ingest device for backhaul of Pro AV into a Zoom meeting is missing. A small device with SDI and HDMI input wired NIC running embedded OS.
Andy, yes, that sounds like a really good product, and I hope we can get something like that. It was interesting being a field reporter for this and wanting constant access to program and something that another piece. And actually, I was talking with someone embedded in one of these streaming companies, and it appears that there are some things that make this at least a little bit more difficult than you might think. I come out of broadcast, and in broadcast, we always had, here's preview program. It's always dependable. This is what's going out to the world. This is what's coming up next. So as somebody behind a monitor trying to make decisions about what to cut to or what to do, that real-time ability to not only send out but get back everything that you need in terms of not just the picture, but the picture, the sound, in sync, everything, the graphics that are running, and kind of know in real time everything is happening. Turns out that's not the easiest thing in the world to do. At least that was what my friend who is very connected with these things was saying. I had a lot of scratching the head. Yeah, there's still some work to do in that area, and I think everybody knows that there's some work to do, and they're going to start pressuring because more and more people are using this like we are for professional production. And you need those kind of tools if you can possibly get them because it makes everything easier from the producer's side of things. Elias, you had some thoughts on this?
Sure. I was just thinking about the Zoom Room for Pro AV and some of the changes that are going to be coming there. I think if you guys are covering this on the NAB show tomorrow about how you were ingesting sources over SDI, sending them to Zoom Room, sending them out of Zoom Room, I feel like the Zoom Room product is evolving so that you can do a little bit more of that backhaul stuff. But I'm wondering if I hope that Zoom's going to start a hard look at how people are actually using Zoom to do these remote productions and go, oh, hold on a second, maybe we need some sort of a backhaul product here.
I can absolutely tell you they are fully engaged in all fronts on trying to do that. They are getting a ton of requests from the top end of the market, the medium end of the market, and the lower end of the market about improvement of tools. And they are listening very hard and trying to do the absolute best they can to serve all these things. It was amazing to me what we were able to do. And yes, we have some connections and we can talk to some people and ask for things, but it is a huge endeavor now. I mean, you've got hundreds of millions of people using the Zoom product and all of them have different needs and all of them have different wants. And you can be sure they're listening. They're listening very hard and trying to figure out what can we work into these things. Guy, take us a little farther.
Yeah, first when I looked at this question, I was just like, well, it exists. They're coming out with it, but it's not a simple box at all. It's it looks simple from the outside, but it's Zoom Room's Pro AV, which is probably not going to be cheap. If you wanted to do this cheap, I mean, you really got to think about the audio as well as the video, because with a Zoom Room, you can do multiple cameras into it, but routing the audio to that speaker is a little bit more of a challenge. So I'm watching Oliver. I'm hosting, so I have my little cloud here. So I'm hosting one of his Mac Studio machines, and it can run 8 copies of Mimo Live and feed in 8 feeds into a Zoom meeting with isolated audio. So because it's each copy of Mimo Live is a Zoom participant going in. So I'm just trying to think of how would you do that cheap on a NUC or something like that, launch multiple instances, still have the ability to have not only picture, but isolated audio so that each feed coming in, whether it be HDMI or SDI, is routed correctly into that instance, whether it be Wirecast or eCam or whatever software that you want. So it's something to think about. I mean, how low can you go? How cheap can you get this? I mean, we know that Chromebooks will run Zoom, but at what point do you say, okay, this isn't enough power to do the 4 people that we need for a city council meeting or something?
Alexander Knight.
Yeah, so I mean, we have applications like some of them that were mentioned here, like Mimo Live that has and we have Wirecast and vMix now, and of course we have Zoom ISO, which only works on a Mac. I really feel like there's a place in the market for some kind of dedicated appliance that runs Zoom ISO that just only does the one thing. It's ready to go out of the box. Has something like Zoom ISO with a touch screen, which would be really cool, with an SDI card in it already, and just have something that like it just works. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to buy a Thunderbolt enclosure to get it set up. Something like that I think would be really good, because I know there are plenty of people that do AV production that don't have use Zoom ISO. So then they're going to have to use some other application. But I think a piece of actual hardware that does the ISO audio, the ISO video stuff would be really, really neat.
Let's go to our next question.
Next question comes from Guy Cochran here on the panel from Seattle. Thoughts on the $2,500 PTZ camera from Zcam? And there's a YouTube video there.
And I'm sorry for those of you who were watching me adjust my monitor. That's the downside of traveling and coming back, is I just had a monitor literally fall down. That would never happen during a regular show. PTZ was everywhere. there were so many cameras on the floor operating telemetrically. In our booth, we had an incredible Sony array. Sony was very generous and provided us with excellent, high quality cameras that were all run remotely. In fact, Guy here on the panel was running a lot of the stuff that we were seeing. The shots that you were seeing were set up from Seattle by Guy during the course of the actual run of show. That area on the whole show floor, everywhere I went, there were cameras on pan, tilt, zoom heads operated either from the booth with control surfaces or in the case of us and many others, remotely. So it is a huge business. Everybody knows that it's big. I mean, houses of worship are using it. They're just everywhere. So, in fact, I was surprised. I did not see a tremendous number of traditional shoulder-mounted cameras on the floor at NAB this year. There were a few there. But it just seems like people are moving past that. They're moving to these PTZs. They're moving to the smaller form factor units. There were a lot of little box cameras I saw in rigs, those small ones with different kinds of lenses, micro four thirds lenses, and the larger glass. That has been a huge trend, and I don't think we will see a tremendous amount of emphasis on the traditional form factor cameras as we're going forward. That's my opinion anyway. Guy, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we call them robocams in the olden days. It's now just becoming so prevalent. And this one I'm kind of interested in because they have not only the PTZ camera, they have the matching model that is non-PTZ. So and it's going to be less expensive than the $2,500. So in the Panasonic world, we have the UE150s, and then a CX350 would be the non-PTZ version. So I like this idea that you can, and in the FR7s that we were using, we saw at the booth, those are the PTZ version. The FX6 is this, less expensive handheld version. So if you're looking at cobbling together a system that is matching, where you don't, because you might just need a wide shot or you just need a tight shot, and you don't need anybody operating that camera. So that intrigues me with this model that we're seeing on the trade show floor from Zcam, because I'm using a Zcam right now, and it looks like this might be about the same sensor that you're seeing me on in this for $2,500, which blows my mind. So, and it has NDI as well. We'll see how this thing comes out. People. If you watch the video that I linked to, people were saying that they can't believe that that's the picture quality of a PTZ camera. So if that's what people are on the floor saying, I'm excited at $2,500 because I mean, we were using cameras that are $12,000. So just to put this in perspective, go buy 4 $12,000 cameras versus 4 $2,500 cameras. Whole different world, whole different league as to how many angles you can pick up or how many cameras you could even purchase. So I'm excited to see what these look like because it is a 4K 60 camera. So with 4K, you can, if you're not using the full 4K, you can zoom in to that extra resolution. So it's not just an 18x zoom. You could punch in 1.5 times that at least and get a nice picture. So I'm excited to see these actually hit the market. They say August, I believe, is the shipping date. So we'll see, because we've been asking Blackmagic. I thought it was going to be Blackmagic that would come out with it, and here we got this little company out of China, doing it. So we'll see. We'll see if Blackmagic watches Zcam take the market, and they go, "Oh yeah, okay, look what we got up our sleeve," and come out with something bigger and badder, 8K.
So much innovation coming. The NAB is just awash in these companies that I had never heard of from all over the world, really, and they're all doing so much innovation. You think about it. When I was coming up in my career, a camera had to be this huge box for all the circuitry. And now the reporters are in there with those little DJI cameras, and it's like it's about the same. It's 6 inches tall, and it's got a tiny pan tilt zoom camera on the top, and it's putting out a stunning picture. What happened to all those electronics that used to have to go into the huge camera bodies? It's all been miniaturized down into chips, both the sensor chips and the processing chips, and all that stabilization is built in, all the logic for being able to do pan, tilt, zoom from either a little hand control or something. There's just runaway innovation and products that are punching way above their weight. that are changing the whole industry. And I saw, actually, I think in the newsroom, maybe 4 or 5 of the reporters that I saw or coverage, including people that I've known for years who might have been there with a crew, were taking around the little cameras, and I did a little of this too, taking around my iPhone on a simple little DJI, and some of the pictures that I haven't had time to process, you'll be able to see over the coming weeks. And I got really good results with a little DJI Osmo 4, my old one, not the brand new version, but that in my iPhone. Both Jason Bache and I were going through the show floor, and I've got a lot of really cool footage from it. It's going to take me more time to process it than it did to shoot it. So know that it's really easy now to capture a lot of really good stuff. It's still a tremendous amount of time on the back end to weed through all the junk and turn it into something that's viewable. But this is the golden age of being able to go out and cover some event like this for just about anybody at a price that was unheard of a decade or 2 decades ago, certainly. Let's go on to the next question.
Next question comes from Brian Bavito in Detroit, Michigan. This was my first time attending NAB, and after seeing many of the switchers and PTZ cameras up close and personal, they all appear to look exactly alike. Are they all made by the same manufacturer in the same plant?
Guy Cochran.
Well, I'm glad Brian got to go. Brian was early on in the pandemic. He would come on to the show and hang out with us, and he did some great remote work. And so the cameras from some of the manufacturers do look alike, because there's something called the Canton Fair, and it's the largest trade show, I think, in the world. It is in China, and all the OEM manufacturers get together and they show their wares, and these guys will stick what they call their private label on it. So, for example, if you look at Bird Dog, the side of the thing actually says Bolin, and it's a Bolin. So that technology, those molds, those electronics, all that stuff is expensive. But then they'll just put their own software on that FPGA, and then it'll have that brand on it. So you'll see the little Bird Dog logo, and then they'll do, well, Bird Dog is one of the companies that really, really, really did a good job of hiring some developers that really wrote some nice software to add some functionality. But the picture quality, it's going to be the same because it's a Sony sensor. I mean, that's what they do, is they go get all these pieces, this lens, this. So the molds are super expensive. I mean, like this thing we're having done in China, this is an example of a product that you wouldn't believe if you were to, we call it the BOM, the bill of materials. If you were to see, so these speakers alone, if you were to see what these things cost individually, it would blow your mind how much all this cost. And then this is custom aluminum. So something like that is super, super expensive to develop that mold. So that's why you see stuff that looks exactly the same, because they don't want to redo the mold. And so off the shelf speakers, screens, and then it looks the same because it is the same. It's just rebranded. So we call it white label, private label, and it's just a matter of branding.
And this is manufacturing across the world. I was involved in, back in the old days, I had a client who was an appliance dealer, and your washing machines, there's a couple of plants that make all of them, all the brands, and they will work on this brand. I won't even mention brand names because I don't want to give you the impression that any of them, they are different. I'm not saying they're all the same, because the commissioning client, let's say, and again, this is just random, let's say it's Admiral's washing machines or RCA or Whirlpool or whomever. They specify what kind of motor at what longevity, at what amps out. We have different designs for the basket arrangement or something like that. So there are differences in them, and there are certainly tiers of first quality, mid quality, and basic quality for the market that wants those things. But there's not a plant for every brand name making their washing machines. It just isn't efficient to do that. You get some place that's centrally located where they can get rail cars in that deliver all of their parts from all their suppliers. They're assembled there by the team that knows how to assemble them. And the labeling of which machine is under which brand is one of the last steps in there. Some, the really high-end stuff, they take more time and their design things are different, and maybe it's a sub-line on the same thing. But it's not at all, it wouldn't surprise me at all if the internal motor and and system to drive your washing machine in 15 different brands are exactly the same. This is just manufacturing made efficient in the 21st century. And of course, it's true of electronics as easily as it is of household appliances. No reason to invent the wheel or reinvent the wheel every time for every different label for every product. Guy, you had another follow-up thought?
Yeah, and this is prevalent in the automobile industry as well. If you look closely at some of these high-end exotic cars, and I used to own one where the part number was the same as the Alpha, it's like it's the exact same thing.
Yep.
The markup for the other version of the exotic is 10 times the cost, but the people that are in the know in our forums, it'd be like, oh yeah, you just go get this Denso part and it's the same exact one. It's just not 10 times the price. So it's not a unique thing. And then you'll notice that it works the other way around, where somebody who really dominates, like Scarhoy is a great example of a company that's innovated, and other manufacturers are going to them because they made something that is truly unique and hard to develop again. So you'll see manufacturers. I was surprised. I think it was Red actually that is partnered. It was either Red. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Red that partnered with Scarhoy to do the camera control. Because why reinvent the wheel? Why not just partner with somebody like that has all the engineers, all the know-how, and jump 2-3 years ahead of the curve instead of having to build it in-house? It just doesn't make sense sometimes to build this stuff in-house.
Yeah, it's the world we live in now, and get used to it. And it doesn't mean there isn't a sense that you can find the right level of expense to get the most capabilities for you. But don't be surprised if some of the things, I'll tell you a little secret. Decades ago, I worked for a stereo manufacturer, or I worked for a guy locally. I mean, I was very young. And he sold stereos, and I said, what's the difference between those three models? And he took me aside and said, let me take the faceplate off. He did. And he said, this faceplate has 6 holes drilled into it. This faceplate had 8 holes drilled into it. And the extra controls were either enabled or disabled depending on the price point they wanted the unit. But the chassis behind was exactly the same because they needed a price point here and a price point here and a price point down here. That's just the nature of modern manufacturers. There's no reason to make 3 different chassis inside the unit. You're going to make one and then either reveal or not reveal to the user the capabilities. And don't we see that in software now, right? You're going to spend for the basic thing, but if you want extra capabilities, you add you pay a little extra, and suddenly your software that wasn't doing this feature can do it. It's already built in. It's just whether or not it's revealed to the user on the end. This is just how the world works. Let's go on to the next question.
Next one's from Matthew LeCount in Oakland. Have all the big NAB announcements happened, or does anyone think there is a one more thing moment coming?
The one more thing moment from Apple was always just, that was Steve Jobs doing marketing at a very crazy high level. I don't think there's one more thing coming. It's a different environment now. NAB, these big trade shows, pull the world's focus onto a particular industry and a particular set of products at a particular time. It's like the car show in Detroit. A guy was mentioning that. This is when the new models are going to come out. Everybody understands it. Everybody's going to understand that the entire auto industry is going to be focusing on the new coming year's models at this show. So it's concentrated and it's clear, and everybody who's a big fan of automotive technology will focus on that. For our industry, for broadcast and production gear, NAB is the big show in the US, and IBC in Europe are the 2 big shows where generally manufacturers do this stuff. There's no sense to holding it off for 2 weeks after NAB. The eyes have moved on to something else. So if you are going to see it, you will see it at the show or increasingly just before the show. We saw a raft of announcements come out in the week or 2 before, kind of following Alex's idea of get the word out, get some buzz talking, and then get to the show and answer all the questions about it. It's very much along the lines of the model we use here at Office Hours. The question and answer part is where people get their particular questions dealt with, but you have to know about the thing, and wasting time saying, I'm just going to spend an hour telling you about all the new product features seems to me, now that I've done Office Hours for such a long time, to be a little bit of an old model. And so we'll see. I think you will continually get more of the pre-announcements ahead of the big shows of here's our new thing, trying to compete for screen time, for eyeball time with the audience. And then over the course of the actual rollout at the show, where people can get their hands on, you'll get much more social media discussing about it. If all the people who are interested in covering the show and talking about it have a few days or a few weeks of getting to know it before they can talk about it. One of the problems we're facing, I'd love to be able to be more informed about all the products I saw on the show, but I'm still just processing everything and trying to understand what it is that I saw. I saw, 1,000 things that I'm interested in, and I need some processing time to know where they fit into all these niches and what they can do for people. And that's, I guess, our job when we're in any part of media, is to think it through and think, what could this do for people? What is it missing? Because they won't tell you that on the show floor. You have to probe and ask questions about, you've told me what it does do. Now, where are the things that it doesn't do quite so well? What are the features that it might be missing? And that requires context, and context requires some time to think about it. At least that's my 2 cents. Let's go on to the next question.
Talalak Lopez Waterman in San Jose, California asks, to revisit the comment about DMX over NDI, what problem is that solving for you? On a LAN, I would be far more comfortable using ARTnet or sACN for reasons of reliability and latency.
Elias, what do you think?
I don't know that it's necessarily solving a problem specifically. Like, we've got a lot of solutions to run DMX over a network, but I think the bigger picture is it's showing that we've got more solutions to maybe run what you might consider a legacy protocol or older protocols over modern interfaces. And it's also showing, I think we're starting to see manufacturers get into using NDI or using network protocols to do some creative problem solving. I think less about let's shift the discussion over to what the X keys guys are doing with one of their control surfaces. They stuck a little Raspberry Pi, but it's equivalent, little system on a chip, and it has central control built in. And to connect 2 or more of those surfaces, they're using NDI and wrapping the messages in those metadata frames. And so we're starting to see, okay, beyond just sending audio and video over the LAN, which is the obvious use case, what else can we put over the LAN, and what do it? NDI might be a good way to send DMX, might not be a good way. Let's put it out to the market and let's see if the market responds. I think we're starting to go into that phase of product development.
Next question.
Next one's from Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida. I would like to use remote production for a ballroom event with 6 times 1080p sources. How would you backhaul the sources, Zoom, SRT, NDI, etc.? And how much VLAN bandwidth would you spec? Thank you.
There's somebody in the office hours community who has absolute answers to this, and I am not him. So I was hoping that maybe somebody else on the panel who's a little more back-end oriented, but this may be a question you'll have to bring back another time. I'm sorry. I don't want to just kind of whiff on that. Oh, good. Guy raised his hand. So, Guy, do you have some insight into this possibly?
There's so much more to it than meets the eye. I mean, it's kind of like a baiting question, because I can answer it in a couple different ways, but I need to hear more as to what the budget is and what's going to come through. Because when I look at what I'm receiving right now, I was going to pull up the bandwidth. It's about 6 megabits per stream. So when you're looking at 1080s like that, I mean, unless they can ship Zoom Rooms Pro AV in a fast manner, I don't. I need more information to answer that. If you want to bring that question back tomorrow, let me and add a little bit more to it, or maybe Elias has some more that he.
Yeah, Elias, dive in.
Yeah, I was just thinking, you mentioned ballroom events. So are you also going to be shipping the sources locally as well to do iMag? Are you going to be doing, live streaming off-site? Like, is that going to be handled on-site? Is that going to be handled off-site? Are your sources SDI? Are they HDMI? Are they NDI? Is there a combination of all the above? Like, it really is an it depends situation. If you, in just broad terms, if you're talking about 1080p, if all your sources are compressed, 6 to 10 megabits per second per source. If they're uncompressed, dial it up by a factor of 10 at minimum. The answer about the answer is yes. So, and get as much dedicated as you can, because it always ends up being a little bit more than you think it is on the calculator. I don't know. That always seems to be the way for me.
Yeah, there's a concept called headroom. Make sure that you have more capacity than you actually think you might need. Guy, you want to get back in?
Yeah, and then there's a whole lot with the interaction. This is where I need to see more of like a diagram, because do we want to put like at Zoomtopia, we took these monitors and we had them sideways so that we could see people as if they were life size. So you take a 70-inch monitor, put it portrait, so now you shoot the person sideways. Now you got mix minus issues. So this is why, is it just video or is it audio? What are you trying to do? Because yeah, you could do it with a couple different ways of pulling the feeds in. I've seen people just use a bunch of laptops to make this happen. And at first I was like, why are you guys in 2024 still using laptops to do this? But when I was on site, it made sense, because these operators would come in and they would treat that, they called them VCs, virtual or VG, I can't remember their terminology, but they basically were treating those laptops as if they were the person. So to the audio guy, he's looking at laptop, VG1 as remote guest Susie, and he's got her audio, routed in so that they could do an appropriate mix minus when she pops onto the screen. So that's the thing, is how much interactivity do you have with the ballroom guests that are on site? Do they want to talk to them and look at them? So that's the thing, because you open up that mic and all of a sudden they hear themselves back in, and you create feedback loops and all that stuff. So you really need to think this through before just worrying about the bandwidth part of it. But that is obviously a big part of it, because we saw it at NAB where we were pushing the limits of that 100 megabit connection. So be aware that you're looking at least I'd even put 8 megabit for a little bit of overhead for each of those 6 people. So you're looking at 50 at least, plus whatever your outgoing is on top of that, not just bringing them in. Are you feeding them back out? And could you just do it in the cloud? I mean, some of this stuff you could just, there's ways of pushing off pushing resources off site and then bringing down just what you need to.
And if you're interested in this, be sure to come back tomorrow and watch the show, because we're going to be doing a retrospective of exactly how we set up and did the show from NAB. So tomorrow will be the discussion of that, at least one of the discussions we'll be having. And let's go on to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, would the Viewsonic VX1655 4K-OLED be a solid portable monitor for mobile production work? There's a link to the
Alexander.
Viewsonic product.
Oh, yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, Alexander, you had your hand raised.
I took a quick look at the specs of that OLED monitor. One thing I will say, there's a couple things actually. It's not very bright. It's about 400 nits. So the other major thing that puts me off on a lot of these PC grade monitors is that they often will not accept anything other than 60 hertz or anything less than 60 frame rates per second. So if your production switcher, if you're working with frame rates on your switcher at like 2997, 2398, the monitor won't respond. You won't get any image out of it. So usually a production grade monitor that's designed for those frame rates will work better. Generally, they will be color calibrated. They will look better. I would look at the small HD line of monitors too. They do make smaller ones in like 15-inch size as well. They're going to be about twice the price of that Viewsonic, but they definitely will work better for production work.
Elias.
I haven't looked at that monitor specifically, but another limitation with some of those portable monitors is they're USB-C only. So if your switcher does not give you USB-C, and I don't think a lot of switchers do, you're completely out of luck. It's only going to work on PC and Mac. So you want to look at what inputs and what outputs you get. And also if you're going to be on the road with that monitor a lot, I'd be worried about durability. I mean, you're going to want a good travel case for something like that. There's other purpose-built production monitors out there.
I'm laughing at the next question, but let's go for it. Next question.
Next one's from David Brady in New York. Thoughts on Boston Dynamics' new Atlas robot? When do you think we can deploy a bunch of these to the NAB floor and save our producers, operators, and talents' collective knees?
What a fun question. Mark Giuliani, dive in.
Well, I don't know what I'd do if I saw a whole bunch of robots coming walking down the hall, but I did see one of the vendors had Boston Dynamics, what they call Spot, which looks more like a dog. And I know that that's being used by large contractors to go through projects every night and compare how much work's done for their scheduling and such. So it's not too far off. I don't know if I want to be in the hall, though, with a whole bunch of robots banging around.
Elias, your thoughts?
I was just trying to find the company I was talking with. They were really close to the office hours booth, but they had a robot rig that they're pitching it as a rental rig for. But I was looking at that and I was going, I bet the office hours crew wish they had something like this, because it was, it was a full PTZ, fully silent actually. All the motors and robotics in it were completely silent. You couldn't hear this thing roaming around the floor. It was a beautiful piece of gear. I got a feeling this is going to be the next frontier.
I'm just going to comment because the one field hit I did with a robot, it failed miserably. They had a little robot dog kind of thing in one of the booths that I was like, okay, so let's go down. We're going to do a point of view. And then somebody swapped down in the booth and somebody had to leave and come back. And it was one of our weirdest little hits. And the robot never functioned, right? At the moment somebody hit Q, take the robot failed miserably. So it just, it's nice to have the human beings that were surrounding me through the course of this and supporting everything we did, because they always came through for us. Alexander, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a long time before this happens. I mean, if we can't even get Siri to do basic things like, take me home, Siri. I'm sorry, I can't do that right now. It's going to be a while.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of possibilities, and for safety things where you have to go in and check the core of the nuclear plant, robots, go for it. I'm all for you. Thank you for taking that job away from a live human being. But there are a lot of things where so far it's going to be a mix. I think for the rest of our lives, these robots are amazing, and the things that they do extraordinarily well, and they keep people from having, like I said, to do things in unsafe conditions. And there's a ton of investment as we have drones swarming the world, doing a lot of tasks that helicopters used to do. So double edge, and you just have to figure out where it fits in. Boston Dynamics is a fascinating company. Every time I see those robot dogs or those robot patrol people in any kind of thing, it's both exciting and a little freaky to me still. So we'll see how it evolves. Let's go to the next question.
All right, we have a QR code question from Todd in Maui, Hawaii. We currently use Playbox on several old PCs to operate the 24-hour broadcast channel for our college. We would like to change over to a Mac-based system. Can you recommend anything?
Oh, boy, this is one of those questions when I would love to have our rig. Now, a lot of our panelists, Alex, and a lot of people are still traveling and coming back. This would be something we would love to chew on, but I'm not sure this is the right panel to do it for you. I do know that there are plenty of systems out there, and broadcast is migrating in huge scale to more automations and simpler systems, and the capability you can get at relatively modest price points, something that would fit into a college system. There's just tons of things, but there's so many choices that I'm just not the guy to tell you about them. So I think this is one that hopefully the back end can push back to you. Maybe Todd, we'd love to answer the question. So bring it up. Another thing, Guy, do you want to dive in on that?
Yeah, there are some software. It's just not cheap. It's expensive. So the Softrons on the Air Manager is the one that you'd see used on the Mac. There's also Tools on Air. Those are two recommendations, but you're in the $3,000. I mean, it's over $1,000 for each of them. And when I tried adding Softron on the Air Manager, that's why I was hesitant to even recommend it, because it's $3,495. It's the big boy toys. But I know that Jeffrey Powers has used just Wirecast to do something simple, but it's not a proper playout engine that's on the atomic time clock that's going to kick it out. In fact, Mark does it in the radio way.
I was wondering if Mark would raise his hand on this, but I know he's on the audio side of this. Elias is going to pop in. Elias?
I was thinking Jonas's Playout B. If you haven't looked at that, that might be a solution.
And maybe we're pointing too low, because it's a college, and so often colleges have capital improvement budget funds around, so they may have some serious money to be able to throw at this, in which case you will find lots and lots of options for automating any kind of broadcast service. It used to be more in the radio side than it is in the video side, but they're getting parity. Mark, your thoughts?
So there are a number of automation systems for radio, but they're very expensive. And, there's companies, probably one of the most well known is Wide Orbit. We use one that's called DAD, and they basically are just giant iPods. Essentially, you put all of the media that you want played, and you give it a time of day, and it'll go through and play those, and then give you a report out as to what played and what got bumped.
Yeah, I know Softron. I remember Softron being in this business as well. So, and you know, digital content is digital content, whether it's playing out a radio thing or eventually, I mean, you'll need bigger servers and things like that. But I can't imagine that some of these automation companies haven't already migrated into, if not looking at it immediately for the future, play out for a small broadcast operation for you know, it's not a wide area network. It's kind of more a small broadcast community kind of thing. There's got to be some around. I just haven't looked into them, Todd. So keep bringing the question back. When the panel kind of reforms and most of our not that this panel is anything less than our regular panels, but I know some of the key people who work in those verticals are still out traveling and things like that. So bring it back up and let's look at it again sometime. Thanks for the question, Mark, and I'm jealous of you living in Maui. I'm going to go on to the next question.
From the QR code, we have Sean Johnson in New York City. I have a simple setup that would really benefit from a record tally, like an on-air sign that lets folks know we're recording, using Tricaster Mini and also recording on a BM Video Assist. Anything that can connect and light up when we click record.
Yeah, there's some new products out there, and I could not find it because my rig isn't set up. I have one plumbing thing to my iPad rather than the normal stuff that I do. There is, I know at least one record sign thing that has been inundating my inbox, and it's a cool little system. It's not terribly expensive, a couple $100, and everything works kind of virtually. They've gone into the recording signs for the home broadcaster. And this is an inexpensive, nice-looking little system, and you put it outside your home office or whatever, and then when you key your mic inside, it lights up. There's a variety of slip-in signs, recording, on-air, silence please, whatever you want to put over the thing. So it's not as specific to broadcasting as the stuff they used to be able to find in the MarkerTech catalog, which is where the old traditional really recording signs that broadcasters use. So it's an interesting little thing. Guy, you had some thoughts about this?
Yeah, I'd be looking at what companion modules are out there so that you can do different lighting up of different things. Like we have one for vMix that won't allow you to even cut until you've started. So it turns the button white to cut until you've started recording. So it actually has some dynamics in there that knows whether or not you're recording. So when you actually press record, now you can cut, because there were so many times that the operators forgot to record the show because they got, chaos at the beginning of the show. And it's like, oh, you forgot to press record. Well, if you can't cut, then you're not going to forget. So that's some of the tricks that you can do with Companion. And I'm sure with Blackmagic that's one of the modules that you can go ahead and in there and program and then make it light up either on a, because you could make those buttons go in a browser. So you could just make it a really big browser with a dynamic that says red or green or black or whatever color that you want as soon as it begins recording.
Nice. Mark Giuliani had some more thoughts?
So Scarhoy makes a system for tally lights. I'm not sure how it could be integrated so it would function automatically, but they do have a whole tally system that you push a button, the lights pop on different pieces of equipment.
Yeah, so you should be, hopefully, Sean, you'll be able to find something out there. Let's see if I can do the transition to the top of the hour, because I wasn't able to. I'm as you can imagine, my entire rig this morning was in boxes coming back at the airport, in not boxes, but carry-on stuff. And so I'm a little discombobulated here, and I'm going to try to pad at the end to hit our crossover at the time. Anyway, as always, don't forget, if you go to officehours.global and you look at the shows coming up, you'll see, I think, Jonas and others, people, not Jonas, who does Mimo Live? Oliver Breidenbach has been doing a Thursday right after us. So check the schedule and see if any of the content that we have that is not show specific, that is coming up, might be something you're interested in. People put a lot of time into preparing this. And, part of our goal here at Office Hours is to do as much training as we can, help you, everybody who's watching, if you want to learn about a new technology. And Mimo Live is one that we've been using to great success. us. And Oliver has very generously suggested that he would be happy to come in and help people learn his software and how that environment works. Also, don't forget that we're going to be talking about NAB for a good little bit of time this coming week. Tomorrow's show specifically, we're going to be breaking down the tech stack. We didn't have very much time to do it live from Las Vegas. In fact, that was one of the things I think everybody was a little bit sad about, is that we would have loved to have gone back to the booth and given even more time to the people who worked so hard to bring NAB to you this year. It was an exciting thing, and the community came together. The volunteer work we got from people, there were so many people who put in so much great time helping us do live from NAB that they all deserve maximum amounts of credit. We'll be right back at the top of the hour, and we'll talk about NAB. Welcome back. We are post-NAB 2024. A lot of us were able to go to the Las Vegas Convention Center and do an amazing look through here. I'm going to toss up at least one little thing. That's a shot I took just walking down behind my hotel. Las Vegas is a crazy place, and during these big conventions, it gets crazier and crazier. Announcements on everything having to do with professional level production, all the way down to the one-man band kind of stuff. We saw it all. If you're not familiar, and I think probably you should be after hearing us talk about it at length for the last few days, NAB has been going for decades. It's well over 50 years old, since the early days of radio broadcasting, and we've seen so many changes in it, and one of the things that's changed too is there's a ton of products and services that are no longer in the, if you don't have a capital budget of tens of millions of dollars and are putting up a tower or working with a helicopter to get your video, you shouldn't be here at this big, huge trade show. Well, it's nothing like that at all. There are products for every area of need. We saw tiny things, big things. Overall, in terms of themes, it's really hard to say, but NDI was there on the show floor a good little bit. AI was on the show floor a good little bit. There were just a lot of technologies that you may not know are kind of wafting through the video industry. And so to be able to get on the show floor and see what's there and what are the trends is huge. Hopefully some of the panelists will ping in on what they saw. I will do a little bit of confession here. I was so busy during the 5 days that I was in Las Vegas that I had hoped to go out and just have a day to myself to look at video gear, because that's kind of my primary interest, that and editing equipment. And I was just inundated and didn't get a chance to do that. I saw it in the peripherals and as I worked with doing the live broadcasts out here. But boy, I need to really catch up. I don't feel like I went to NAB for my own brain and for getting input into what I need. I feel like it was one of those things where I went for everybody else to try to show everybody what NAB was like, and we're hoping very much that we did this. It was an unbelievable team of people, and the technology, and everybody coming together to broadcast this. So let's just have an open discussion of what everybody saw, the announcements that you heard come out of the show floor, because it's a huge press gathering, and see what everybody's interested in. Alexander, what were your thoughts about this?
Yeah, well, I'm still trying to catch up. I'm completely overloaded with all the product announcements, so I'm still going through a lot of that. But I'm just curious, Bill, to get your perspective on this, since you were there on the floor and seeing so many different companies and different products. Did you get a sense of a general trend with a lot of these different companies? Like, are there any new trends that you saw? A lot of companies are trying to build products that tailor to a lot of different types of customers. Now we see a lot of big companies that typically had really, really high-end products, and now they're dabbling in the more cost-effective area and maybe going towards content creators, that type of space there. So did you get a general sense of like where they're trying to go with a lot of that stuff?
Okay, here's what I'll tell you. I saw things that were incredibly familiar as somebody who has been going to NAB for 20 plus years. So I would see a small professional outfit with maybe a 20 by 20 or maybe a 20 by 40 foot booth, and I would see 8 gentlemen in suits and ties obviously making deals on something big. And I used to see that all the time at NAB. You'd go by and you'd see a name you were familiar with, but it wasn't something you did as a solo practitioner. These are the pros. And it used to happen in radio. It used to happen in audio. I saw a lot of that kind of gentlemen in suits making business deals. I saw on the other end a lot of content creator types who are wandering around covering NAB with small rigs, handy cams, the DJI little handheld cameras. They were there in force too. So it's really a big range. I came back. The overall impression is that NAB is coming back. It was really had a tough time during the pandemic. It was shut down. Then even last year, from what we saw, it was kind of getting its feet under itself. But this is the NAB that we used to see, a professional, high-end, this is where everybody comes. The big booths, the Sonys, the Panasonics, those big manufacturers were there again. If you went to the Sony booth, it felt like it could have been not 20 years ago because the cameras were much cooler, but it could have been 10 years ago. Easily. It just felt the same. Huge display screens and the array of cameras, everything from the broadcast cameras that you would expect to see rolling around on giant pedestals at the Tonight Show or something like that, all the way down to the smaller stuff. So traditional NAB is coming back. But on top of that was layered this newer, more agile thing where we're seeing things like NDI and we're seeing things like drones and robotically operating and all the pan-tilt zoom cameras. I have to say I saw more PTZ cameras this show than I have ever seen before. The booths where you would have had a bigger camera, possibly even an operator, nobody messed with that. You'd had a controller and they were doing the show to a pre-programmed thing. The grip gear, the lighting, they're in gigantic force. Everything from the Technocrane side where you've got a 50-foot crane that is robotic with a robotic head that can get a shot literally of a 5-story building through the top floor window, all the way down to smaller jibs and all the little nuts and bolts that you need to get your local productions done. All that stuff is there. The other changes, I was really shocked. I had thought, how are they going to fill this new West Hall? West Hall is huge. And I went over there, and I wish I'd had time to edit. This is a difficult thing. Jason Bache and I just took off the first day we got in town. I said, let's go, and we're going to try to do the whole show. Because I was thinking maybe there's a little bit in West Hall. And so we went over there, and my thought was to try to start in West Hall and then do a time lapse, a run through NAB. I was going to go West Hall. I was going to cross Paradise Boulevard. I was going to go into the north thing, which is totally under construction, cranes everywhere. It's a mess. Then I was going to eventually go to the press room, just kind of show people what the press room is like. Then I was going to come out into the central hall where our booth was, show you a little bit of that by running through there, say hi to the office hours people. Then I was going to go out the back. And in the old days, there used to be a carpet that ran from the back end of Central Hall all the way into the side of South Hall, kind of middle of the lower level of South Hall. And along that, that's where the drone people first showed up. There were trucks, there were mobile rigs, there were vans for production, things like that. That was gone this year. There was nothing in that big central yard except the food trucks. That's how they were kind of helping people get fed. And it was insane with lines the whole time. That's all gone. You'd get into South Hall, and South Hall originally was the upstart computer people. That's when Apple showed up at NAB for the first time and had a big presence there. And Blackmagic is still there and has a major presence there. But that is a huge hall on its own. I mean, many conventions who have equipment to show people, the South Hall would be enough for their entire convention. And so starting on the lower level, and it's got 2 levels, an upper and a lower. So that was my plan. We only got to the West Hall. the West Hall was so big and so chock full of stuff that by the time we walked we took the Hyperloop, so I got some cool video of hopping in the Hyperloop car in the parking lot of Central, going to the West Hall, arising out of that, taking a look around the West Hall, which, by the way, the parking lot has a great view of the Sphere. So shooting a little of the Sphere, and then let's go into the West Hall. Well, 5 minutes of walking to get into this giant facility, and we're finally at the exhibition area because it's just so big. And we start going through, and it's, my God, there's hundreds of booths over here, literally hundreds of booths. And we saw things like the Switch and some of the ones that, unless you're in the back end of the industry, you don't really know that much about. At least I didn't from a production point of view, from the old style production. And we never got to any other hall. We spent so much time just trying to go up and down the halls in the West, or actually one to the back and one out was our thing. And Jason did yeoman's work. He actually ran through part of it, trying to get the whole thing covered. And we were going to continue, and our batteries and everything else, we were just ill prepared for how big the West Hall was. So I went back and I did later a great walkthrough. Jason and I again teamed up, and we did a walkthrough of South Hall, upper and lower. But as busy as I was in the main Central Hall, where you saw most of our coverage coming out of, I never had the time to do that. So I've got West and I've got South, but I don't have much of anything from Central to put together the time lapse that I was hoping to do. Okay, enough talking about it. Let's hear what everybody else thought. I'm going to just do these in orders. And Elias, you're up first.
Yeah, I mean, some of the themes that came out for me, obviously NDI was huge. Cloud production was another meta that kept coming out. I mean, one of the demos that stuck out in my mind was, funny enough, in the West Hall at the Verizon booth, the Michael Lang and John Rydell doing a live cutting of an NHL game, Rangers game. They were bringing in all the cameras from the stadium, but how they were doing it was over a private 5G connection. I think they were doing a gig down and 300 megabit up, but they were doing live cutting of this game over a cell connection and doing it in cloud. That was amazing. And in terms of cloud, it felt like there were a lot of different manufacturers, a lot of different companies that were doing cloud-related stuff for the single operator all the way up to, an NHL-sized game. So that was another theme that really stuck out in my head, is like cloud is more than just a way to deliver mixed video content. We're also looking at doing live mixing in cloud now.
Yeah, actually, I went to one of the things that the press office arranged was, I think, that same demo team. And it was really fascinating to see this kind of cloud production migrating outward. They're all testing it very, very carefully to make sure. You got a lot of money riding on professional sports. And if the NHL can actually make this happen, it's going to change a lot of stuff. They were also talking about the infrastructure, things like in stadiums, handling that incredible crush of data transfer that comes out of 50,000 people watching a game, and then all wanting to send the pictures or the video or whatever back to their local bases. You can imagine the amount of bandwidth that gets consumed there. And they've been wiring stadiums for that kind of thing for a while. So you get to hear demos or white paper reports of things like, what is the state of the art of massive data transfer as our society needs that more and more. Mark Giuliani, what are your thoughts?
So to give you a sense of scale, I think I walked 20,000 steps each day going through the different halls. And Walt Palmer and I, Walt Palmer's our radio engineer, we spent the first day just looking at radio equipment. So everything from audio boards, where they were stressing things like IP protocol and how to utilize that for the digital audio boards. And I saw a lot of signs that were saying Dante spoken here, to processors and exciters and transmitters, a lot of things enabling remote connectivity so that you don't have to be actually at the transmitter building. You can talk to things remotely. And then there was a lot of AI. So even for the radio station tools and software, they were talking about AI to build campaigns, to do things that we're using AI and ChatGPT for everything else. And so that was incredible. But there was just a lot of products, and it's for the first time I've been, it was a little overwhelming. As Bill has said, you got to decompress a little bit, and at least now you know what to go research, and because you've seen it now firsthand.
Yeah, the first one is, it really is, you go into brain lock a little bit as you try to figure out, where do I go next? What do I see? Everything looks fascinating. Guy?
Yeah, we've been screaming cloud from the rooftops for a couple of years now, just because we saw it back, at the beginning of the pandemic. In fact, my AWS account, I was doing bonded cellular with a Teradek bond 10 years ago, and that's where my AWS account graduated from. And because they don't just give you these GPU accounts to anybody right off the bat in the numbers that you need to do a big production, because you have machines that you use to ingest, receive machines. So I'll receive stuff via SRT or via Zoom Room, and then I'll feed that into a vMix machine. But seeing these guys do it, like Michael Lang with the NHL, it really shows you that you don't have to own this heavy iron anymore. You don't have to own $1 million grass switcher. You just don't. You can have it off-site. And the demo that they're doing is the bandwidth, it can be up in the cloud, and you could be in your hotel room or on a bus cutting a show. I mean, because you only need the picture of the multi-viewer and then a stream deck or the buttons to actually hit cut. So we do, Grant was kind of laughing yesterday because him and I work on a production, and we're just like, we do this all the time. Like it's a regular rhythm for us to spin up a huge environment, have guests come in from around the world, and we're cutting and doing playouts from AWS. So it's cool to see that other people are finally getting it. In fact, I mean, even for this show, the way that we're doing with a constellation that's $10,000, not everybody wants to drop $10,000, but vMix, you can get a license for $60. I mean, and then an AWS instance for $2 an hour. So that's one of the big things. And then more Ks, like Blackmagic announced, the 17K camera. And when I was in Vegas for CES, I got to go to the Sphere and talk about resolution. I was looking for, breakup and compression artifacts in their footage, and I couldn't find it. And so one of the cameras that is starting to get a little bit of notoriety, it wasn't on this trade show floor, but it will be at Cinegear, is called the 9x7. And in this example, you can see how small 4K is versus 9x7. I mean, it's just going to be massive. It makes HD look completely small. So that camera is what they're using to shoot stuff for the Sphere. Here's what that camera looks like as far as a picture of it. So I'm sure when we go to Cinegear, we'll stop by this booth and get a closer look. But this camera's reality. This one is what they are using to shoot video for the Sphere. So when you talk about the theme of more Ks, some people are talking about it and other people are doing it. So if you want to go on that bandwagon, that's the way to look until Blackmagic actually ships is 9x7. And of course, Red got acquired by Nikon, and so KG is the name of the new CEO. He was being cruised around, and there was an interview with Jared Land that said, hey, we're just doing this partnership now, but you're not going to see the results of what the engineers are putting together. And it sounds like that team is super, super happy to collaborate together. That was one of the reasons why the deal actually went through, is because the engineers just got along so well, because they're like, because there was this lawsuit where the Z9 came out, and that's like a $5,000, $6,000 camera, and they needed red RAW. They needed that. They wanted to use RAW, but they couldn't because of the patent. So they just made a deal and bought them, and now they're going to come out with new stuff. So I think 2 years from now is really when we're going to get the benefit of this new Nikon red color science. And if Nikon does what I would love to see, they'll open it up. But who knows? I mean, are they in business to make money or to empower filmmakers? So I'm excited to see what comes out of all that. So yeah.
There's a lot of things going on. Mark, you want to come back in on this?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's interesting is for 15 years, I've gone to the AIA conference, which is a big expo for architects and engineers. And the comparison is that I used to think that was big at 35,000 people, but Bill and I were talking during the show, and he was saying that we don't know what the numbers are yet, I guess, for this show, but it's been up to 150,000 people in past for the NAB show. I think one thing that was very helpful was the app that NAB had put together, where I know Walt Palmer had a list of everything he wanted to go see, and we could plug into the app and we could know how to get there because it would basically give us the directions on how to get there. So good jobs to whoever put the app together for NAB.
Absolutely. It becomes mission critical because people have said, I had an interview in the South Hall and then Alex had to do that. He had an interview in the South Hall, then he had one interview in the West Hall, and then he had the next one in the South Hall. And that was, if you watched our coverage live from the show floor, the reason I went on at length on the last day about the booths that were around us is that I was trying to give Alex enough time to hop on however he got there and get from one location to another, which sometimes can take 10 or 15 minutes. I mean, if you're walking, it is a huge amount of space between things, and it makes organization exactly what Mark is talking about now. If you don't know where you're going next, and if you don't arrange your appointments and you're having to go back and forth from central to south to central to west, all the way back to south, and you can kill huge portions of your day just trying to get physically from one location to another.
Yeah, I thought Alex was going to get there and just be a sweaty mess by the time he got there, because I've done that haul a couple of times, and I'm like, we should have a little AirTag tracker on Alex as he goes across, so we could have a little graphic of him going across the map, because it's a long haul. I was amazed that he did it in that time, and good job.
Absolutely.
On and
Absolutely.
rolling.
And Grant, Guy, you're extraordinarily fit. Imagine us older guys who are sitting here trying to hustle over one to another. I mean, I did the same thing. Somewhere around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, all my rings were closed every day, because you're just you're on the go constantly.
Hats off to the camera operator. You think that it's
just
us
gosh.
walking.
Those guys were tanks. Edwin is unbelievable. I worked with Edwin and I worked with Tenzin over the course of our live coverage. Both of them did just incredible yeoman's work. And yeah, it's one thing to be running around holding two microphones. That's one thing. To be with a camera rig the size of the one you'll see, I'm sure we'll get a chance to look at it tomorrow. We started calling it the Franken rig because it had so many accessories on it and it was so built out. And even though this stuff is lighter than it used to be, and the battery packs are not the old gold mounts that used to weigh a ton when they were lead acid, it's still a lot to carry around. So yeah, hats off to our shooters from this. They were amazing. Mark?
So one bit of advice for anyone going next year: bring your phone charger, because my battery went dead on my phone about noon because of all the radio waves that are going through. Everybody's trying to transmit. But hats off to everybody who ran the booth for office hours, because it was a lot of work. There were a lot of people there doing some great work.
Oh, you will hear, Greg Grechmeyer. I could not have survived without the coordination from the team in the field. Everybody did just an amazing job. The fact that we were able to do this with a volunteer crew is nothing short of stunning. So all hats off to everybody who you saw on that long list of credits. And Guy actually read the list earlier in the show. And do you want to do that? Because we need to. These people put in so much time and effort and worked so hard just because we all believe in this concept of doing that. Is that something you can pull up real quick, Guy?
Yeah, give me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We probably had 20 to 30 people on site at all times. And people like Jonas came in all the way from Germany. We had people from all over the world. Tenzin came in from, where is he based? I'm forgetting.
I think they said India.
Yeah, from India. There was a team of he and I'm sorry. I truly apologize because I met so many new people that keeping their names, if I didn't work with them directly and spend time, they're going to escape me. But it's an unbelievable
I got the names up.
group. All right. Yeah.
All right. So it's Tenzin,
listen to this.
Tenzin, Jonas Dottel, Nigel Dessau, Don Eisenberg, TJ Heidemann, Maxfield Hunt, Jeff Keithley, Joaquin Matus, Jesse Mills, Fred Parr, John Porterfield, Jeffrey Powers, Peter Rosato, Edwin Ruiz, Tim Snyder, Dan Sweeney, and Scott Tupper. That's the filter.
And so you saw me and 2 or 3 other people on camera. These are the people who really made this show happen.
Oh, wait, but there's more. The field producer, Greg Grickmeyer, and Kevin Hansen.
God.
You guys didn't see him, but I could see him on my little multi-view. He's back there connecting a bunch of stuff. So him,
Unbelievable.
JJ, John Wallace, we had Chad Lafarge from afar, Talalok, Richard Lavery, Brian Shand.
Brian did an amazing job producing this. Oh, gosh.
And then the pre-show coordinators, Cindy, Keith, Robert Shabadity, Brandon Buttram, Laura, Jeffrey Powers, Rajan. That's just
Rajan Khan. How many times did Raj or somebody else save my rear end by getting in my ear and telling me, no, we got to stop that in 2 minutes or we got to go someplace else? The coordination of this is unbelievable. So you may have seen a couple of our faces. We are not this show. This show is this incredible crew of back, including Guy and Grant holding down the fort, and without their coordination of everything happening live, it would not have happened because they were the bridge to the entire world through the internet. So it was all the panelists who this was truly a community effort, and I am unbelievably proud of this community. Okay, let's get to some of our questions. Oh, Mark, did you want to finish up with the last thought you had?
I was just going to say, I think Greg Gibson was there helping too. I didn't hear his name.
Totally.
And Joaquin was carrying one of the cameras, so there was a lot of people there.
Yeah, we'll probably leave somebody out, and I am bereft that we left anybody's name out because everybody showed up every day and worked incredibly hard to make this happen. All right, let's get to the questions.
All right, so the first question of the second hour is from Alex 4D Goldner in London. Does adding AI features to a good enough NLE make it better, or just make it a good enough NLE with some AI features?
Alex, nice to hear from you. I think that's a very good question. I'm taken back to Michael Cioni being on the show a week or so. No, it wasn't a week. It was about a month ago, maybe a little more. And breaking it down into 2 types of AI. A utility AI is what Michael kind of dubbed one of them, and then the generative AI that gets all the press. Utility AI is that little stuff in the back that just makes your life easier. It's the AI put in service of finding you something that you need to find because it's watching your actions and it kind of knows what you need. It's the stuff that really is hidden behind the scenes but really does help you do your work faster, more efficiently, with less hassle. To me, that is unlimited and almost entirely positive. It really does cut your workload and help you be better at whatever it is you want to do. That is not to say that the other side of this fence that he was mentioning, which is generative AI, which gets a lot of the press. This is I'm going to speak 30 words into a microphone and a picture that wows me is going to show up on my computer. That stuff is fascinating. And it is incredibly powerful, and it has the chance to make a lot of changes, but it's a different kind of a beast. And this is the personal part of me. I keep trying to use it for something as simple as storyboarding, and I've so far had nothing but failure in terms of I want 10 pictures that all look like this, they're similar, and they have the same kind of general, not just feeling, but characters or pieces or prop. Those are the kind of things that I would have asked the storyboard artist as we were trying to design a video in the front end, working on the brief for a client or something like that. And it always seems to fail spectacularly. I can't get it to give me what I want. I can only get it to give me what it thinks those prompts make sense to it. And so I think to me, the kind of uses that I'm looking for, it's still not there in terms of being utility useful for me as I would hope it someday might be. But maybe I just don't pay enough attention or spend enough time. I do know a lot of people who spend a lot of time in prompt engineering, and whenever I ask them if I can do that, I kind of get the general, well, not quite yet. It generates stuff, but it doesn't generate what I want it to. It generates what the large language model says that these words mean to it, and sometimes that diverges from what I want. Mark Giuliani, your thoughts?
So I don't think it would make a good enough editor that much better it would make a good enough editor more convenient. And I know that Walt and I sat and watched the Blackmagic design, had a presentation for an hour on DaVinci Resolve. And it was amazing how much they're using AI just to do some of the cutting. For instance, it'll automatically take the text from the video that you're cutting and transcribe it into a window. And then you can move through the video by just scrolling through the text. So if you want to do cuts between one camera and the other, you can do all that by cutting to the different people in the editor itself, or in the text editor itself, rather than doing it by scrubbing through the software.
Yeah, I do want to mention something about that, because as somebody who shot and made video, has done that for a long time, my kind of Turing test for can it substitute for what I consider good editing is a thing I shot probably 30 years ago. I was covering a store for a client, and I made a horrible mistake. I left the camera running when we changed locations. So I'm shooting this setup, and I'm shooting this setup, and I'm shooting now we're in a different department. And in one of those crossovers, I literally forgot to turn the camera off. So I was just carrying it, handhold it as I walked through the whole store. And as an editor, when I sat down at the end of that day, I was going, oh no, I left the camera running. Let me go through this fast. And I saw something, and I stopped and said, wait a second, what happened there? And I backed up, and the camera, completely undirected, had swooped up in a swish pan and rested on the logo for a second, then swooped off. And I went, that looks really cool. And I picked it out, I put it in slow-mo, and it became the show opening, because it was just something I never would have gotten. It was what a friend of mine calls a happy accident. Would any kind of AI ever be able to mine the data for that happy accident? Maybe. It's possible that you could design an AI that said whenever the logo is clear, even for 5 frames, add that to your favorites. Don't reject it. Don't get rid of everything, because that's kind of the way I think about video editing now. I go through all the footage, look at it, and figure out what is the stuff I don't have to pay attention to. And this is because as a Final Cut editor, we have this reject feature. And then when I sit down to make the program, I have only the stuff that I think is worthy of taking more of my time, and I've gotten rid of all the stuff that doesn't. Do I want an AI trying to figure that out for me? Maybe at some point I will. But right now, it feels like it disempowers me as an editor to have something automated trying to make those decisions. It can easily follow the script, but on that swish pan that will really help bring my program to life, there was no text. There was no nothing except a momentary thing that I saw as an editor and said, this is important to my program. We'll see. Alexander?
Well, I don't think any of us should strive for good enough. I mean, in fairness, I think to the main 3 applications that a lot of us use, Adobe Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, Final Cut, I think they're all incredibly powerful applications. But for someone like me who's a content creator, if you're turning around content and you're spending many, many hours combing through video to cut short form content, also edit out a lot of stuff and find problems, when I saw these AI features announced for DaVinci Resolve, which is the application that I use, I mean, I was jumping out of my seat. Everyone who needs to be able to turn around content quickly should be super excited about this stuff, because for me to be able to just type in a couple of words and find out, well, where did that person say that in that 2-hour program, to jump right to it without having to sit through the entire thing to try to find it, that is a massive game changer. That is going to that's going to free up hours of my day for other stuff, for friends and family, which I already don't see enough.
Good point. Excellent. Let's move on to the next question.
Next question is from me. Was Logitech at NAB demoing their new Micro Four Thirds webcam?
Guy, did you see it?
I just looked at the exhibitors, and they were not on the list. However, YOLO Live, that's more of a consumer type product line, so you would see them more at like a CES or something like that. NAB is the broadcasters, and although there is some crossing over into what we call the prosumer land, that's straight up consumer, so I don't blame them for not having a booth. But a similar camera, which is the YOLO Live camera, was there and on display, and it's less expensive. So if you're looking at that model, I would go and compare those two, because the YOLO Live one looks very similar, and it's cheaper by like $300. So, and then Mevo, well, I guess that is the same, right? Logitech bought Mevo. Is that correct? I'm pretty sure that's the story there. So,
I think I heard that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the scoop.
Mark Giuliani.
What guy said, I just checked the app and I didn't see Logitech there as one of the vendors.
Yeah, it's interesting. You don't notice who isn't there because there's so many people who are there. But there has been a noticeable, I've heard people say, well, why aren't they at NAB this year? And so I hope that doesn't become a trend and fewer companies do it. Maybe it'll, maybe as Alex occasionally says, it'll morph to a different kind of thing. And we'll see more from a central location presentations as opposed to the just walk, talk to people, and push the buttons. I hope not, though, because pushing the buttons is a lot of fun. Anyway, next question.
All right, we have a QR code here from Tyler Darlington in San Diego. In regards to things announced at NAB from Blackmagic, are there any devices I should consider for monitoring HDR from Resolve or FCP, Final Cut Pro, UltraStudio Monitor?
And Alexander's going to help us out here.
So I haven't tested it yet, but I'm going to be in the next couple of weeks. I came across Blackmagic's remote monitor app for iOS, which I believe through Blackmagic Cloud, which you have to pay for, gives you a session code, and you can use your iOS device as a screen to preview the video, which, as we all know with iOS devices, with their incredible XDR displays, they're incredibly color accurate. So if you're doing HDR work or just want to, see how it looks on a very color accurate display, that actually may be a good solution for you.
And from my point of view, so I shot everything I shot at NAB this year in HDR. And Las Vegas is a very colorful thing. In fact, this thing that I brought up before is just a iPhone shot, and the dynamic range of catching all that neon and the lights on the wheel behind the Link Hotel. And I looked at my footage, all that stuff, particularly on the hyper tunnel when Elon Musk's get to the Duhalls. It's beautiful. It is just beautiful. And that's just coming out of an iPhone. And the Apple ecosystem, which I happen to live in, I brought it back and I can see the raw stuff, but it automatically processes everything into HDR on my laptop screen. And I'm just constantly astonished at the range of contrast I get and just how beautiful the footage looks. Fact, it's sad to me when I have to turn it around and put it out to the web or anything else because HDR doesn't carry through all cases. They do a great job of mapping, and I get a good-looking picture, but it doesn't look like it looks on my screen. Boy, if I can get what I've got on my screens here out to the public, I'm going to be the happiest camper in the world. So we're still in that transition period for me, and these programs once you, and Alex said this before too a bunch of times, once you get into an HDR world, you're so excited by the beautiful vibrancy of the pictures that come back, even from my phone, that it's kind of a little sad when I have to change it over to SDR and send it out to any client because they're not going to see it as pretty as I saw it. Anyway, next question.
Next one's from Chris Widener in Indianapolis, Indiana. WoodWing Assets and WoodWing Studio. Has anyone used these? I hate websites that says call for quote. Usually means their price isn't competitive.
Well, it can mean that. I have never heard of them before, so I unfortunately, I guess we're going to miss on this one. But I share your concern for something. You know, if somebody won't tell me a price, and I appreciate that from the clients. I mean, I've worked with so many clients and sat shoulder to shoulder with them and say, look, we're doing this better than our competitors. We're putting all these things in that they don't. It's like, you know, that cheap version of the camping tent that, yes, it's a great price, but the second time you try to put it up, you're finding things bent and not working. But you didn't want to spend, instead of $100 for the camping tent, you didn't want to spend $250. So it's just not going to last as well. And I kind of get in the same kind of thing. If somebody doesn't want to give me a price, it may be because they're not competitive for other reasons, but it may be that they just don't have time to explain why they deserve more of your money because they're doing a better product or a better service. And so I think that leads to the, I'm not going to, call for the price because we want to talk to you, make sure we qualify you, make sure you understand what we're trying to do. And the best people who do that will also say, if your budget doesn't reach where we need, I've got some recommendations for you as somebody who works at the different level of this that will do a good job for you with the amount of money you have. So it's tough, Chris, I understand. I don't have any more advice for you other than that. Sorry, let's go on to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, what does the panel think of the Ross Carbonite Code?
Guy has some thoughts, thank goodness.
Well, I mean, $14,000, 30 NDI inputs. We know that Blackmagic isn't going to do NDI, so Ross is coming to the table because Panasonic was the only other folks that were doing a serious switcher with it, NDI for reasonable money. So, I mean, 14 grand, we'll see how it all comes together. But I know Jonas is super excited about it. And I know that our friend Tucker uses a lot of Ross, and Doug, what's Doug's last name? Doug has a trailer that he chose over the Tricaster. He had a Tricaster and he chose to go with the Ross after hearing from a lot of folks and doing the research. And we have our friend Bo, who works at Ross, I'm sure will be doing a nice little demo for us. But I was looking at some of the behind the scenes of it and I'm excited for it. I mean, it's one of those things where when you want rock solid, cannot fail gear, it's Ross. I mean, that's what you're going to find in the TV stations up there with Grass Valley. So, and they just celebrated their 50th anniversary, and they did a great keynote. If you guys haven't watched it, you can. I'll put a link in the chat. It's almost 2 hours long, and Bo actually does a really great demonstration where he does voice cutting, and it's a phenomenal demo. So if you haven't seen it yet, I will put a link to the chat.
Yeah, I think you were talking about Doug Ferguson, who was on the panel for a long time. Great guy, and he was at NAB with us.
Yeah,
so it was great to see Doug again. I hadn't talked to him in probably a year, and so we hung out a good little bit. It's so cool to catch up with old friends. Let's go on to the next question.
Alex 4D Goldner in London asks, for at least 10 years, we have been told that although Apple don't have a booth at NAB, they send people. Why? Can you point out any changes to Final Cut Pro, Motion, Mac OS, or Apple hardware that could have been informed by visits to NAB?
Oh, they were there because I was at the office hours booth most of the time. I had probably 15 or 20 present and former Apple people that I have formed small relationships with. At least they know my name. And some who I consider friends, particularly some of the people who have retired, like Steve Bays and Colleen Pendergast, that were heavily involved in the Final Cut team. In the case of the two people I just mentioned, they're no longer with Apple, so there's no NDA other than former stuff that we might have talked about at some point. But they're there around. They just do things differently. I think I mentioned earlier in the show that idea of Apple having me seeing a news item that Apple licensed the entire Shutterstock and Getty thing, not for rolling into their products, but to have access to, so that they had a huge imagery and video database that they could use for doing things with, how they're going to use whatever implementation of AI or search or whatever they're working on. They needed the tool. So I understand it was in millions and millions of dollars that they are dedicating to the research necessary to create the AI-driven or the large language model or the large data set models that they're doing. So they're just working in a different way. I mean, they are a consumer company, but in the back end, they don't generally, and this is my opinion, they don't generally try to be the first with new technologies. They try to figure out a way to do something with it that is unique and has value to their users. And that's what I expect out of it. So we didn't hear any announcements, and I know some people were upset that why aren't you like Resolve and like other people announcing new features every year at NAB? Well, that's just not where they're at. Anything else I say is speculative, but there's just so much change roiling through the industry that to spend a ton of time doing just the next version of what you've already got, I don't know whether that is the play here or whether the play is that everything is changing so much that there needs to be something new. We look at these little technologies in clips and things like that they had years ago, 2 or 3 years since click. And what are we seeing now? We're seeing everybody doing these short form shorts and things like that. Well, they were investigating that 3, 4, 5 years ago, and they actually had a product out for it, but it didn't really make anyone except some young people and some YouTubers or whatever. I mean, I don't know a lot of people using clips, but I suspect that the research and the R&D they did to do that is not dissimilar from what we're seeing on shorts and some of the other things that are sweeping the web now. Now, they obviously didn't think that they wanted to be in that business, and they don't have a product that they're trying to compete for those eyeballs on TikTok and Twitter and things like that. But they know about it. Clearly, they know how to do that kind of thing. So the question is, what are they? Was that a research endeavor? I have no idea. That's the fun of Apple is you can guess all you want. You don't know what they're thinking in the back rooms. So until they release something, I don't know. Guy, what are your thoughts?
Well, back in the early 2000s, I mean, they were going after creators because they wanted us to buy their computers, and now they're a different company. You know, back in the early 2000s, they really wanted a Final Cut push. They acquired Final Cut from Macromedia, and they wanted something to compete with Avid. So they didn't want Avid going over to the PC. There was a big riff over there, and so Apple was taking it super serious because they didn't want to lose Hollywood. Once they got Hollywood, and then once they started seeing that they could make way more money off the App Store and off of the iPhone, the focus on broadcast became smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller because, as you can see in the hardware lineup, they're not taking the Mac Pros as serious. I mean, the trash can Mac, those things, the sales just aren't there like they are with the iPhone. I mean, when you walk in to an iPhone release and you see the line going out the door, I mean, you tell me. I mean, it's numbers, and so the importance.
Beautifully taken. Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And remember the fact that they did the keynote for WWDC and then that little line at the end, all shot on iPhone for a huge production where you've got a multi-billion-dollar company who is resting their media presentation on shooting it on a phone and not even screaming about it until the tail end of the presentation. Oh, by the way, this thing you just saw with all the corporate executives telling the entire world was shot on this little phone in a nice rig with professionals at every level of it. I'm not saying that, they just somebody stood in in front of each person and shot it on their phone in their hands, but they're signaling it's capable of doing that. Mark, your thoughts?
So you hit on it earlier in the show when you talked about watching news get covered today. Most of the people aren't carrying over-the-shoulder cameras. They're carrying iPhones, and they're using those. So Apple's there researching how can we become more involved in this market and how can we get to those end-of-line products that they're doing all the editing with before they broadcast it out. So I think Apple's there doing a lot of research and development.
And trying to figure out what do people really need. And, of course, they're a business. So, for every shoulder-mounted news camera, there's probably 100,000 iPhones sold. And it's a vastly different thing. They are a consumer products company, first and foremost. But I heard at one point, and this could very easily be apocryphal, but I heard at one point that there was like 600 engineers and support staff working on the iPhone camera section alone. Now, again, that could be totally a false number, but it just feels kind of right that they understood that, originally when Steve Jobs did that iPhone rollout and said it's a this and it's a that, and we have a new this, a new that, a new this, and it's all this thing that incorporates both a camera and a phone and a database, connectivity product all in one. Boy, they leaned into the camera really hard. And I had a lot of success, even for my clients, if I can convince them to just let me shoot it on an iPhone, I can get really good results. Just like this footage I was watching from my NAB. I've run cameras for a lot of years, and boy, one of my shoulder rigs where you're constantly having to to check iris, and you're constantly moving from light to dark, and you're constantly trying to figure out the right expression. Oh, there are windows behind my thing. I'm going to really have to iris down in order to not blow out this scene. And you just hold your iPhone and you swing across from the windows to the thing, and everything just seems to look great. It's got enough dynamic range, and it understands in the back end how intelligently to process that. And I'm sure Samsung phones and the rest of that are doing the same kind of thing. I mean, this is the leading edge of where time and effort is being put in these companies to create image capture devices, which is at one point what your phones are today. Let's go to the next question.
Next question comes from Ross McNulty in Vancouver, Canada. What about the NAB parties and private showings? Any hint of the Final Cut users group?
Yeah, sadly, I can tell you a little bit about that. No, Mike Horton runs the group in LA. That has always been, and I worked with Mike for many years on putting together the Super Meet at NAB, and there just wasn't one this year. First of all, the place that we were based out of, we moved to different hotels, but we were at the Riviera for the last few years, and they imploded the Riviera. So that was one of the kind of more affordable, walkable hotels, and that's why the Super Meet was there. Also, there was just some things that got disrupted. The users groups are a little bit different these days than they used to be. There's still people in affinity groups who want to meet and do that. But were there private showings? If you knew somebody and had formed a relationship and they wanted to talk to you, they would reach out and let you know. There were a couple over many years, not this year because I was way too busy doing too many things. But in prior years, the community, there were always events. And if you knew the people on the internal teams, and I'm absolutely sure this is true for Resolve team and for the Premiere Pro team as well, if you had kind of a link up with them, they would tell you where they're doing something or they're going to be at this event, and you could go and talk to the people because they do want to talk back and forth. I remember one year at NAB, Apple had a little camera crew, and they were asking people about the NLE, about Final Cut. What would you like to see? What are you doing? What kind of work? And they were just pulling people out of the line to get into one of the Final Cut specific events and saying, come talk to us. We just want to ask you questions to get to know what your thoughts are. So that happens at NAB a lot. So, but no, in terms of the main users groups, I know. And I know one of the other guys who was involved had the website for that has been a little bit ill. And so he didn't make this show. So there was not much happening. I'll just be straight up about it. There was not much specific to that unless you knew who to talk to. And I will say that 4 or 5 or 6 people stopped by our office hours booth that I have known from either the Apple team or else and just said hi and great to see you. And things are ongoing. Guy, you had a thought about that?
Yeah, some of these groups just evolved too. I mean, that one kind of ran its course. I was involved with that Super Meet stuff early in the day too, but it's just kind of changed course. But I will say this community, since I have so many friends in this community, seeing all the behind the scenes pictures of the gatherings of just Jeff Keithley and Sky and all these guys getting together and then taking pictures at dinner. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, these guys are having fun. And that was the FOMO part of it was, I wish I was sitting at that table because it looks like they're having a good time. And who knows what the conversations are. Jonas and Greg Gibson, they're sitting next to each other. And there was just a lot of big brains in some of these pictures. And I was like, oh, man. And then they got to go to the Worry Studios, which is where the Tony Robbins stuff was done during the pandemic. And that stage is remarkable. So a group of the gang, Doug Ferguson and those guys all went out there. And so I'm seeing pictures from all these different angles and I'm just going, oh man, this looks like it was something worth attending. So some of these parties and some of these gatherings do make you, wish that you were there because that's the part of this show that you don't see is, getting to talk with somebody that's a serious player that has the same mindset as you and wants to collaborate or share ideas. It's really powerful.
I'm laughing so hard because I was you last year. I had to stay home and I had exactly those same feelings. Oh, I so wish I was there. And this year I was at dinner with everybody, and I was sitting next to Greg Gibson. We had a chance to talk a lot, and it's exactly what you're saying. You have a chance to really connect and chat with people who do the same kind of stuff you do. And so FOMO, fear of missing out, as the internet popularly says, is real. It's a thing. I wish we could get everybody in the same place all at once. I don't think that's ever going to happen. But maybe, who knows? Never say never. but we are such a geographically diverse group. I mean, it's just so cool to see Guy in Seattle and Mickey in the back end in Manila and Grant doing the thing, hosting the whole thing from Australia, and realize we're part of this global community. And when you get a chance to see so many people IRL in real life, it is just a joy. Let's go on to the next question.
One more thing. Ahead. The funny part was at the end of it all. They have to put everything back in the boxes and break down the booth. And Jonas goes, "Can I turn off the cloud now?" And he's like, jumps on a plane. And he did his dashes off, and I just turned my off button, and my lights go off, and I'm like, okay, I didn't have to get on a plane and get delayed and all that stuff. So there's parts of not having to go which are great. My feet feel much better than I'm sure some of the
mine
20,000 steps that Mark put in.
Yeah, that's very true. The hardware, though, come tomorrow if you can, because I'm sure you'll see pictures of the hardware stack. I got a little of it on the air at the end when I was trying to stretch to give Alex time to go from one location to another. But it was an impressive back-end system with some impressive brains operating all of the back-end systems. So, yeah, a lot of stuff going on. Let's go to the next question.
Next one's from Nick Batt in the UK. How are you going to make other shows work this well if you don't get the same level of sponsorship? Which aspects from NAB coverage will you use?
Alexander, you want to start in?
Well, that's exactly the conundrum, isn't it? Thing is, we need volunteers. We do need sponsorship because a lot of this stuff is not cheap to do. So hopefully we'll have a lot of future opportunities where we will get that help. We will get help from other manufacturers to loan us gear and that sort of thing. So we got to continue to do that. It's expensive. Everybody's got to fly, to a place and stuff like that. So it's a labor of love. That's why we do it.
Guy?
Yeah, I think that pushing the ball down the field, this enabled people to see what's possible. So like the clarity of those FR7s, I'm looking at it on a higher resolution feed than you guys got to see. And I was just like, dang, that is so crisp. So it's one of those things where you prove the point and then other people start to go, oh yeah, could you do that for us? Or how can we put in this feature? Or yeah, well, we'd love to sponsor you if you can, say our name. I don't know how many times we said the word Zoom, but I thank you, Zoom, for sponsoring our $10,000 piece of bandwidth. But it wasn't just them being there as here, let's give you some money. They were using their product on the floor, and as Andy says, dogfooding it. I mean, I love that when a manufacturer could actually use the tools in an environment that we would really use it. So I think it was a great use of their funds. So this is part of doing this is seeing what the quality is, seeing what the capabilities are. Is Vislink going to fall apart as it goes across in front of an LED wall? Like these things, or do we need more antennas somewhere? So it's by doing that we learn and that we know what to ask for next time. And it might be a lot, or it might be a little.
Amen. Mark?
So, this was a great opportunity for both office hours and the people that lent us equipment because somebody said that Sony engineers were over at the booth looking at how we were utilizing their equipment. So they could see firsthand how it's getting used in the field.
And I won't speak too much on this because it's really for Alex to continue these relationships, but I will just say that the NAB, the newsroom coordinator, the woman who was there, I came back to our setup and she was sitting there. And I think going, we didn't pay quite as much attention as we might have to what you're doing, because she could see that we were interactively out to the entire world. And for somebody who's running a conference that has a global reach and a global audience, to discover that someone is able to do what we were able to do, and it appeared that they were extremely happy that we were doing what we were doing. And again, not my place to talk about this, but if I were them, I would go, how can we enhance what these guys have shown us in real time that they can do? Because I can't tell you the number of times I was out in the field getting ready for a live hit, and somebody said, "What are you doing?" And somebody from the crew would go over here, just go to officehours.global. You can see what we're doing. I don't have to talk you through it. Just here's the QR code, shoot this, and you're going to see the live show, and here we are. And that gets in their head. This is going everywhere. And you can make that point. You could be in Paris and shoot this QR code and see this show right now with this quality, this reach. As professional as this looks, you can suddenly realize that Grant's in Australia, and we got people from all over the world. Courtney's in Hollywood, and they're all communicating about what you are showing right now in real time. And it doesn't take a genius to understand that is potentially pretty transformative in terms of public relations, in terms of advertising, in terms of marketing, in terms of the ability to reach a global audience, because it's not just the people who are showing up, as great as that is. That's what your orientation used to be. The people who are showing up in your convention and then taking the word back to their home bases. But now it's the world is the home base, and it's instantaneous, and it has the potential to really change a lot of things. So we did it. We don't have to say it. We can do it. My wife, I just was saying, I think the first 15 minutes of the first day went really well. Look at it. And she came back and went, I can't believe you guys did that. And I can't believe we did it either. But we did it because of the hard work of not thousands, but hundreds of people who have dedicated themselves to helping us build this. Let's go on to the next question.
Last question comes from Robert Green in Los Angeles. How was the Ross voice control switching? We work in busy control rooms with lots of voices.
Guy, did you see it? Did you take a look at it?
Oh, yeah. It blew my mind. I mean, it was out of their whole Ross keynote. That was the one thing. I mean, they have great sets with these walls and everything that are super impressive. But I mean, I'm not going to go buy in some $1 million wall. But I could see the future when he started talking and saying, hey, build me a 2-box. And to get around it, I mean, you can wear a head-worn mic and then use some kind of latch or toggle to push to talk if you're still worried about any kind of interruption in a busy room. But he was saying, preview camera 2, and it would go to camera 2 and preview, and then he would say take 3, and it would actually do, even though he was about to make a mistake by saying take, and having it do take 2, it would do 3. So, and then he said fade to black, and it faded to black, and bring up this graphic, and bring up the stinger, and it was just like, having to push all these buttons versus just doing it with voice. I could see it be the future. I mean, once you get into a rhythm, I'm sure it'll work. It's just a matter of training it and getting into the rhythm and getting the right microphone. And if it has to be a latch, then a latch, and getting some more division across teams if it is in a busy control room where you have people shouting and messing it up. So it's exciting though.
Thank you to everybody who watched today. I'm sorry I'm brain dead from NAB, but I hope you enjoyed a little bit of a look. We will be back tomorrow doing exactly the same thing, but more in detail. So this is tomorrow's show is about a little breakdown. Hopefully you'll be able to get a talk through and to see some of the things. It was a really impressive effort in the booth at NAB. Hope you'll get a chance to see that and some of the tech stack that makes office hours happen every day, in this case from a remote location. I'm going to go to sleep. We traversed 59,000 miles, 95,000 kilometers. That's 466 million bananas for scale. Before you can roll it if you want, but I'm going to also say thank you as always, not just to the panelists here, not just to the back-end crew who are unbelievably amazing, but to all of you who are watching the show. Thank you for your questions and everything else every day. I did that whole thing backwards because I need a nap. Thanks for coming in.
Well
that was
done,
a little
Bill.
raggedy, but I managed to get through the next day's show. Yay.
Good job.
Standing on your head.
Thank you all for coming in and making this possible. Boy, that was a lot of miles, and it was so much fun to see everybody. What a great crew we have.
Nothing else collapsed.
Yeah, the only sadness is I should have kept a list of everybody that I interacted with in the whole thing, and somehow I should publish that somewhere because there were so many people who did so much.